Welcome to this weekend's Punters. Got another brilliant weekend racing ahead. We're building up, of course, for the York Ebor meeting taking place for brilliant days on the Newsmine next week. But hopefully, Jason can build up that betting bank ahead of that with Newbury, Newmarket and Ripon in front of the cameras.
Yeah, and I think the key is ground conditions, isn't it? Let's hope that we get a nice sort of run of it at the moment. Obviously, we saw what happened at Glorious Goodwood when it turned bottomless, and it's just very, very hard to gauge. We now get some decent ground, horses trying new trips, some old favourites going in the Great St Wilfrid, and yeah, it's not a bad weekend to get stuck into. There are a few floating around.
Right, well, let's begin in Berkshire then at Newbury, the 150. It is the Geoffrey Free. A real interesting makeup here. Got like Kamari, who's likely to head the betting for Godolphin, taking on a real interesting pair of 3-year-olds with the rest on a retrieval mission.
Yeah, and I think that when you look down the bottom, Klondike was a non-runner because of very soft ground over abroad a couple of weeks ago. So he's fascinating. Arrest for me has been crying out for this trip. You look at him, and I know that they had to go and roll the dice after his massive win at Chester, but I think that he still has that profile of a horse going forward. If you look at Kamari, when he won the Queen's Vase, that was back in 2021. And he hasn't really reached the heights that he promised after that. He just sort of stayed at around that level, 109, 110. That seems to be him. And he's off the back of the listed win last time. But Arrest, for all the world, looks like he will gallop them into submission. Dettori, it gets the leg up again. And yeah, this could be a big step forward for him for the big one at Doncaster.
Yeah, bouncing back then for Arrest and Frankie in the open. We move on to the 225 here. It's a sprint handicap. We've got 11 set to face the starter. And the betting suggests this is really competitive.
Competitive, open, say what you want. You know, you got the likes of recent winners, Libra Tiger and Wolverhampton, but probably looking like they're just about at their ceiling rating at the moment. Punch Bowl Flyer has changed stables. He goes for John O'Shea for the first time, but gets a regular pilot, Charles Bishop. So we're guaranteed to get the pace with him. He's in stall number 4. But for me, Harry Brown, after he was going through the grades quite nicely, he's not really had the rub of the green the last twice, I think. He's not really had the rub of the green the last twice that he's been out on the track. And the handicap run at Ascot in the Holyrood, the Palace of Holyrood, was a very, very big effort indeed.
Harry Brown then, obviously, yeah, there's a good effort there. And I thought he's a big price as well when I was just looking at briefly. The 3 o'clock then is a 7 furlong handicap class 2. All the usual suspects in here. Bless him, Accidental Agent, a former Group 1 winner, Lethal Nymph as well. Then a couple intriguing 3-year-olds down the bottom of the weights also.
Yeah, I mean, look, Scholarship, I've tried to get on board with him, but he's not really come forward on a couple of occasions. He gets the blinkers for the first time, and he's got to turn that form around with Classic, who put up a good performance when winning at Sandown last time. The old favourites, Isla Kai, Lethal Nymph, those will be the ones that pop along up towards the front end. And I wanted to give Pop Master a bit of a chance, but I'm not sure whether 96 is absolutely ideal for him. Accidental Agent, he is dangerously well treated. Look, he hasn't won for a little while. You have a look back at his run in the Racing League last time. It was a massive effort, came from the back of the pack, and it's got that setup. I've got 3 horses that like to make the run in. Lethal Nymph, Isla Kai, Hectic. They'll go quick. He can sit off the pace and be produced late. And guess what? Because he hasn't won very often, he'll be an each-way price.
Very good. Looking forward to that one. So we like a nice one at an each-way price. The feature race at Newbury on Saturday is the Hungerford Stakes. Jumby is back to defend his title. Chindit just looks the archetypal 7 furlong horse in new ownership as well. There's a couple of interesting 3-year-olds. Mostabshire looking to come back, running in Group 1 of Royal Ascot. And also Marban, also kind of caught my eye a little bit at Goodwood in the Lennox, but he's been disappointing elsewhere.
Yeah, he's going to be dropped in and played late. Marban was supposed to be the flagship horse for Charlie Fellows this year, and it hasn't really happened for him. He did threaten to come through, which was a decent enough effort at Goodwood, where he previously shown really good form. Look, Pogo's going to be up on the front end. Misty Grey is not going to be far away. Jumbie goes for back-to-back victories. And you mentioned Chindit. He's an absolute superstar, isn't he? And he's probably the one that they all have to beat, I would imagine. But if there are ever a blinkers first time going to work the ideal, it's got to be with Mustabshire, hasn't it? He looked super when he won at York. Admittedly, he took a big climb in the ratings from that and he's jumped up in grade. But he looks a 7 furlong specialist. Back down in trip could prove ideal. Buick on, blinkers on for the first time. That just might get him to step up a gear, I feel, because still fresh in the mind that run at York, where he was absolutely spectacular when given an easy time.
Yes, it wasn't. And the third in that, of course, won at Haydock at the weekend off a mark of 85. So, yeah, certainly onwards and upwards, maybe for Mustabshir. Let's head to HQ then for the only race in front of the ITV cameras on Saturday. The biggest certainty of the weekend, Jason, is that a grey will win the 1600 handicap.
It's a lovely, lovely race, isn't it? Great for everybody to watch. Everybody loves a grey, don't they? You know, like who's the most famous grey or whatever? It's always Desert Orchid, isn't it? You know, and he's an absolute legend. The two that I quite like in here, regulars, Strike for Johnny Portman. I think he's in absolutely excellent form. Going to be in stall number 16, so he'll be over on the far side of the track. I don't think that that's a bad place to be at all. And Mitro's on fire, who's got a particularly good record, including running here in the Greys race as well. He's not quite been in the same sort of form, but they're 2 7 furlong performers coming back down to the 6. So they'll be hitting the line really, really strongly. Not sure who's the biggest price of those. Maybe Strike might be a pinch bigger than Mitro's on fire. If that's the case, Strike will do for me each way. Johnny Portman's horse is in good form.
There you go. It's a great sight, isn't it? Those grey horses running down the July course. All right, let's head to the Garden Racecourse then in Yorkshire. It is a Ripon. The Great St Wilfrid is the big race. We've got the consolation, and it's a bigger field than it was at last. We've got 19 in the consolation race over 6 funds. To give you an idea for the draw, the big one as well. We spoke about this on the week, didn't we? The old regular Mark's Choices managed to get into the consolation race instead of the big one this year. But again, as all these sprint handicaps are wide open, but the draw could prove pivotal.
Yeah, it's funny. If you were to go down through all the pace in here, I think that it's going to be low in this particular race anyway. So we're going to get a bit of a gauge. I'm going back into the dark ages, admittedly, but I managed to win this on Double Blue, and he was drawn up in the high numbers, right up against the stand side rail. So that's sort of the place that I always tend to lean with. However, Strong Johnson has dropped from a mark of 92 down to 71. And Taylor's Bloodstock paid a few quid for him as well, 70,000. I would imagine they were hoping to run in the Great St Wilfrid itself rather than the consolation. He's dangerously well handicapped. He ran in the Jump Jockeys Nunthorpe last time and finished right on the tail of the leaders, just suggesting that his time is coming to the boil. So I'm going to give Strong Johnson one last roll of the dice, and I think it's really, really interesting that they call on Danny Tudhope. That is a massive positive for me from the jockeys picking. He could have got on plenty in here, Danny, but he's gone along with Midgley, and Strong Johnson will do.
Strong Johnson then in the consolation race. Mentioned Danny Tudhope was on the Old Boys Summer Gandy. Really blotted his copybook at Glorious Goodwood, fell to go into the stalls, a little bit unruly. Plenty of these did meet at Goodwood, got the Monsieur Code. He won the consolation there. He's himself in the big one here at Ripon. Again, a wide open handicap, as they always should be, these big betting heats.
Yeah, and when you look in this, I've got Anthem National up the top, who's been running really well for Joseph O'Brien. First run for Phil Kirby, loves to go forward. Hyper Focus, he's in 15, Anthem National. Hyper Focused 19, loves to go forward. It just takes time, goes forward 18. It's all loaded towards the high numbers here with the pace. There are a couple low, admittedly, Sophia's Starlight and Dream for Gold, but the majority for me high numbers. That's going to suit somebody rattling home. Now, who finished not miles behind Dakota Gold back in 2019? The old favourite Gulliver. Now, we've all been focusing in on Benoit de la Sayette and Billy Loughnane. Those are the apprentices. Mark Wynne is right up their tail, just behind them for the Apprentice Championship. Really, really good rider. Gets the odd opportunity as well for the O'Mara team. I think they've given him a live one here. He was a massive eye catcher from a lowly mark of 87 at this particular venue. He has got to go well, drawn in the high numbers. So how often? We saw it with Aberama Gold at the Stewards Cup. I am loath to give a well-handicapped runner of theirs away. Danny's obviously got to stick with Summergan. I think it's a great chance for the old boy Gulliver to get another big one.
Well, he certainly knows what it takes to win, doesn't he? A regular in these sprints, a regular winner as well for favourable Mark Gulliver at a massive price. That is what we like. Right, 7 races covered. What would be idea of the best bet on the card this weekend?
I think that Harry Brown, who goes in our 225, he's certainly not one-dimensional. He's much better than we've seen. The last twice, he hasn't quite got the daylight where he's needed it. And I know it's a tough little sprint, but Simcox horse is continuing good form. Haley Turner, a good booking. Why won't he be thrusting home fast and late? Harry Brown in the sprint, 225.
Brilliant. Harry Brown, then the one hopefully this weekend to get us some punting power for York next week. Enjoy the action this weekend. And of course, we'll be back to look ahead to the 4 days at York next week. Whenever you're back in there, the very best of luck. And as always, please gamble responsibly.